Dandavat pranams to all of our friends and family around the world. We're continuing with our Śrī Kṛṣṇa challenge. And we have reached verse number 10. And, we are, as we've been discussing, as we've been going along, we're entering now in these final verses, we're entering into finer and finer conceptions, finer and finer points of Rupanuga Bhajan, followers in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, particularly under the guidance of Srila Rupa Goswami. What is their ideal specifically? What have they pinpointed to be as the supreme thing? And so gradation is a very important theme in our discussion, in the discussion of Upadeshamrita. And so in the previous verse, now in these last few verses, particularly these last 3 verses of Upadeshamrita, we were fully within the higher side, within the transcendental side. And there's a gradation that's being described therein. So in the previous verse, there is gradation described in terms of planes of attainments within the spiritual sky. And now in this 10th verse that we've come to, there is gradation in terms of persons, ideals of devotion amongst those who are moving towards the divinity, the gradation amongst different classes of persons, practitioners is being presented here. And in this verse, there is a little bit of a backtrack in the sense that there's a mention of persons who are outside of the purely spiritual realm. But then a clear gradation is traced leading up to the supreme most devotee. So without further ado, here we are, verse number 10. Karmibhyaḥ parito hareḥ priyatayā vyaktim yayur jñāninas tebhyo jñāna-vimukta-bhakti-paramāḥ premaika-niṣṭhās tataḥ tebhyas paśu-pāla-paṅkaja-dṛśas tebhyo rādhikā preṣṭhā tadvad iyaṁ tadīya-sarasī ka nāśrayet kṛtī. We can read the translation here. Jñānis are known to be more dear in all respects to Krishna than karmis. Devotees completely free from jnāna are more so than jñānis. And devotees fixed exclusively in prema are more dear than devotees completely free from jnāna. The lotus-eyed gopis are more dear than them, and Sri Rādhikā is even more dear than the gopis. This lake of hers is similarly dear to Krishna. Would any fortunate soul not take shelter there? So these are, first of all, we can mention, these are all persons who are dear to Krishna. Anyone who's making any approach towards Krishna is dear to Krishna, is appreciated by Krishna. And so the implication, the first class of person mentioned here are karmis. And the implication here, karmi, sometimes that word gets thrown around like it's an insult. And okay, perhaps it is in one context. But in a broader sense, it means someone who's trying to live their life according to revealed truth. They're not just living a random life whimsically. So this word anya-bilash is used sometimes to refer to whimsical action. Person, like generally we find in the Western culture, right? Whatever random desires, thoughts, feelings, impulses we have, we act on them. So within one context, karma means action that has been prescribed by the Veda, by the scripture, good action. And then we also hear in Bhagavad Gita, these terms are discussed. There's karma, akarma, vikarma. And in this discussion in Bhagavad Gita, karma means action that has been prescribed by the scripture, that promote a regulated life in this world, in consonance, in harmony with higher principles to some degree, right? So, and then vikarma means bad karma. Karma, which is, activity, in this context, action. So vikarma means action which is prohibited which has no good result, which is harmful in a gross way to the environment, to the society. And then akarma means inaction. Primarily, action which is free from selfish intent, action which is free from self-motivated desire, and therefore does not incur any reaction. So a karmi, from this perspective, a karmi is someone to be appreciated. A karmi is someone who isn't just acting randomly, whimsically. Maybe they have some mundane desires, but they are moving towards them in some type of regulated way, and including reverence to the divinity, respect, worship of the divinity. We also want to make a distinction. There's a difference between a karmi and a karma yogi. A karma yogi, someone following the principles of karma yoga, they are acting out their duty without any selfish intent at all. So there's a difference there. As soon as you throw in the word yoga, it means there's a serious attempt to elevate to the divine plane, to a higher plane. So a karmi here, as being in the context of this verse, Upadeshamrita, is referring to someone who has mundane desires. And remember, the Vedas, they speak of these 4 ideals of all of humankind, right? Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So they aspire for wealth, they aspire for success in this world, for enjoyment in this world. And they are trying to attain that in a controlled way, abiding by different scriptural advices, rituals, so on and so forth, right? So they are not being completely dismissed here. It is being implied, and it's mentioned in the commentaries, that karmi, they have some position. They can be appreciated because they are higher than persons who are acting whimsically in this world, an anyabilashi, we could say. Okay, so then, continuing with the thread here, the development, so higher than these karmis are the jñānis, right? Jñāni is referring to someone who has lost all interest in the material ideals, material attainments of this world. They realize, Brahma bhuta prasanatmana shochatina kaṅshati. They know that this body is nothing. They realize their nature is spirit, and they're trying to move towards it. They're trying to realize that, and they may have realized that. So they are dealing with the plane of consciousness, above the plane of matter, above the plane of gross physical matter. They are dealing with consciousness. So they have a higher position. They are approaching a more subtle plane. They are aspiring for liberation from this world of matter, entanglement, samsara, birth, death, all these things, mundane desire. They all have no meaning, right? So the jñāni has a greater deal of purity, because they're moving away from the concoction of this world. They're moving towards a plane of spirit. They may be situated in a plane of spirit. So they have a superior position than a karmi. Then next is jñāna-vimukta-bhakti-paramāḥ. Now this is as far as I can understand from what I read of the commentaries in this verse, this is referring to persons who have transitioned. Jñāna-vimukta, they have been liberated from knowledge. And an interesting point here, because I believe one way this can be understood, translated, is that they've been liberated by knowledge. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj very deliberately and clearly in his explanation, one of his explanations of this verse, he says they've been liberated from knowledge. They've realized that it is useless, that plane of jnana, the intellect, even dry consciousness, it is all useless. Just dry theoretical knowledge, absorption and pure consciousness, it has with no affinity for the higher side of dedication, devotion. It is all useless. So jñāna-vimukta-bhakti-paramāḥ, persons who have entered the plane of bhakti, the plane of devotion, having been liberated from knowledge. And there are some examples of this. The Chatu son, the 4 Kumaras, the sons, disciples of Lord Brahma. There's a famous verse in Bhagavatam describing, how they were situated in this Brahman consciousness, this impersonal connection of the Lord, impersonal aspect of the Lord, absorbed in that awareness, seeing the all-pervading spirit everywhere. And they were absorbed in that consciousness. But having encountered the sweetness of Krishna, in particular, this verse mentions the tulasi, the scent of tulasi coming from the lotus feet of the Lord. They became agitated by that. They became attracted by that. Shukadeva Goswami, who is the giver of Bhagavatam, he is another often cited example. He came born out of the womb, 16 years old, immediately ran to the forest, didn't even have awareness of the duality of this plane, couldn't even distinguish between male and female, so fully absorbed in that higher consciousness of spirit, seeing spirit everywhere, seeing spirit within everyone, spirit pervading everything. And yet, when he encountered the beauty of Krishna Lila, he was attracted to that. So sometimes these examples are used in order to demonstrate the purity of Krishna Lila, that even such persons who were universally acknowledged to be fully free from any mundane attraction, they were attracted to Krishna Lila. Therefore, you must understand, Krishna Lila is of the utmost purity. Krishna Lila, although it appears to be very similar to human mundane activity, it is categorically of a different nature. So these examples, jñāna-vimukta-bhakti-paramāḥ, these examples are cited as examples of how we can understand the purity of Krishna Lila. Premaika-niṣṭhās. So then higher than these jñāna-vimukta-bhakti-paramāḥ, greater than these persons who are situated in bhakti, they've left the plane of jnana, knowledge, aspiration for liberation behind. But those who are deeply steeped in prema, divine love, wholesale absorbed in divine love for the Lord, they are on a higher platform. And then finally, then amongst all of those who have prema, have divine love for the Lord, the Braja gopis, to paśu-pāla-paṅkaja-dṛśas, referring to the beauties of beautiful lotus-eyed damsels of Vrindavan, they have a higher devotion for the Lord. And then amongst those, Srimati Radharani, tebhyo pisa rādhikā, she holds the highest position. And there's one incident we heard from Srila Gurudev, which helps to illustrate these concepts. There was one occasion when Sridhar Maharaj, I believe it was at a time when he was traveling in South India during his period in the Gaudiya Math as a young active sannyasi. And he encountered some scholars who asked Sridhar Maharaj, in your conception, who are the greatest devotees of the Lord? And Srila Maharaj said, well, let me first hear what is your conception. And I heard Gurudev mention, this was Srila Maharaj's style, that when he wanted to establish something, first he wanted to understand where the other person stood. Then he can, in a systematic way, address each of those points and show a superior conception. And so Srila Maharaj said, tell me what is your conception? Who are the greatest devotees? And this scholar, and another thing Srila Maharaj mentioned, this scholar, and perhaps it was a few of them, but he'd memorized the whole of Bhagavatam. He said he had the whole of Bhagavatam in his mouth. Srila Maharaj made some charming comment like that. Whole of Bhagavatam in his mouth. It's an interesting point, because he memorized whole of Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses, right? But however, he could not understand the purport of Bhagavatam. So Srila Maharaj said, so what is your conception? Who are the greatest devotees of the Lord? And this scholar responds, the Chatusam, the four Kumars, right? Sons of Lord Brahma. And they, as I mentioned, they can be understood as being jñāna-vimukta-bhakti-paramāḥ, that they have been liberated from jnana, entered into the plane of bhakti, right? And so that was their answer, the Chatusan. And for those who don't know the Chatusan, the four Kumars, they're these four, as I said, they're sons of Lord Brahma, but they're also, one of their special characteristics is that they're actually very great ancient sages, right? Renowned sages. Their glories are celebrated throughout the Vedas quite widely, especially Sanaka. And but they appear as these young boys, these charming young, like 6-year-old boys, 7, 8-year-old boys, and like naked. They appear in this very unassuming and charming way. So anyway, this was this gentleman's response to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, well, let us consider, and so then in 2 verses from in Bhagavatam, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he removed their conception. So first, Uddhava Shloka, Krishna Shloka glorifying Uddhava. Na tata me priyatama atmayo nirna shankara, na cha sankarshano na shir, naivatma cha yatabhavan. A very well-known verse, cited often by our gurus. And in this verse, Krishna, he's speaking to Uddhava. And it is also mentioned that actually Krishna is speaking to all of his pure devotees, who have divine love, prema for him. But in the ecstasy of his relationship with Uddhava in that moment, he addresses Uddhava directly. And so he's saying there, no one is more dear to me than you, Uddhava. Sankarshan, Baladev is not as dear to me as you. He mentions Atma Yonir as referring to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma, who appeared from my navel, Atma Yonir, he is not as dear to me as you. He mentions Lakshmi Devi is not as dear to me as you. Lord Shiva is not as dear to me as you. Even my own self is not as dear to me as you, Uddhava. You are the most dear, the most beloved to me. So the point here, the link, is that who is Lord Brahma? Lord Brahma is the father and the guru of the Chatusan, the 4 Kumars. Then Lord Brahma is a higher position to the Chatusan. And yet in this verse, Krishna is saying, Uddhava, he's directly saying, Uddhava, you are more dear to me than Lord Brahma. So then you can understand from this verse, Uddhava has a higher position from the Chatusan. Then, what is Uddhava's famous statement? Asamaho chadandenu jushama hamsyam vrindavane kamapi gulmalato dinam yadushchajam swajanam arjapatam chahitva vejur mukunda padavim shutibi vimikram. Uddhava, who's Krishna's most beloved friend in Dwarka, he looks like Krishna. He's right next to Krishna, most dear, most close to Krishna. When Krishna sent Uddhava to Vrindavan to give some solace to the Brajavasis, because Krishna has been away for so long, the residents of Vrindavan are dying in separation. Then Krishna sent Uddhava to give some relief to his beloved friends and family in Vrindavan and lovers in Vrindavan. And so Uddhava went. And when he encountered the mood of devotion, the high type of devotion in the hearts of the Brajavasis and the Brajagopis in particular, he was utterly astonished. And then in this verse, Asamaho Charan, very famous verse quoted so many times by Gurudev, so many times, I can't say how many times, he's celebrating, glorifying the position of the Brajagopis to the point that he says, may I take birth as a blade of grass, a creeper, a bush, so that I can receive the foot dust of these Brajagopis on my head. These Brajagopis, they've left everything behind for the sake of Krishna. They've even left the most difficult thing, the path of Dharma. To give up sin, in one sense, is an easy thing. But to give up religion, to give up Dharma, that is a more difficult thing, from a higher, more refined perspective. They've left everything behind for the service of Krishna. Their sacrifice is utmost. They're ready to do anything for the service of Krishna. There's also that example given of Narada, right? Krishna has a headache, right? And he tells to Narada, oh, I need the foot dust of my devotees. This is the only cure for my headache. So Narada, this is in Dwarkas. Then Narada, he's going and asking so many devotees, oh, please, can you give me some of your foot dust? Krishna has a terrible headache. He says only the foot dust of his devotees. And everyone's saying, no, that's offensive. That's an offense, right? How can we give our foot dust to Krishna? So everyone's refusing. Then he tells Krishna, oh, I'm trying to get this foot dust that you're asking for, but nobody's giving it. And Krishna says, go to Vrindavan. Ask the gopis. They will give it to you. I promise. So then Narada goes to Vrindavan. He approaches the Braja gopis and requests, informs them Krishna has this. And immediately they're digging up from the ground. Oh, here. And we don't know if we are devotees. But if there's any chance, if there's any slight chance that we can give some relief to our beloved Lord, then please take this. And Narada is astonished. Oh, don't you know what this means? What kind of reaction can come? Yes, we know. We will go to hell. We may go to hell, forever. We don't care for that. If there's any slight chance we can give some slight relief to our beloved Lord, then, we will do anything. And Narada is astonished to see the devotion of the Braja gopis. So this is their position. And then amongst the Braja gopis, we are told Srimati Radharani, she holds the highest position. The rasa dance, Krishna leaves behind billions of gopis to seek after her. But we won't say too much. We're entering into a very delicate sphere, and even in making some. Well, we are also cautious when we're making comparison, right, between different levels of devotees, because who are we? We're down in the mud, We're down in the mud. We don't have any place to point who is who and what is what. But on the other hand, it is necessary for us to have some conception of what is the ideal. What is the ideal that our gurus are giving us? Where are they trying to take us? It is necessary to have some understanding. So in a careful way, sometimes, we are considering these points. And, I don't want to go on too long. We're already going several minutes over what I wanted. But, this theme of gradation and appreciating different levels of devotion, it is quite widely discussed. Also in the Ramananda Sambad, right? There's a very similar systematic analysis that is being made, that is being presented, amongst different classes of seekers of divine truth. Then also in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, right? Narada, he's on a mission to find out who's the greatest devotee. And so he's going like here. First he's starting karma mishra, and we hear these terms, right? Karma mishra bhakti, jnana mishra bhakti. Mishra means mixed, right? So bhakti, devotion mixed with ideals of karma, attainments of this world. Devotion mixed with ideals of jnana, liberation, knowledge, And then there's Shuddha Bhakti, right? And in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Narada is going from one devotee to another, and each one he goes to points him to somebody higher. Oh no, it's not me, go to this devotee. And there's this systematic development in the plane of devotion. And then coming to Prahlad, right? Prahlad holds an important position because he represents Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotion, with no separate desire attached. And Prahlad mentions later in his prayers to Nrsimhadev, in his exchange with the Lord, Nasa Britya Savai Vanik, that someone who's serving you and wants something in return, they are not a devotee. They are a merchant. They're a businessman. So Prahlad holds this important position, establishing the foundation of pure devotion. And then from Prahlad, then Prahlad points and so Prahlad's also situated in the relationship of Shanta Ras, right? Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhur. the passive relationship. That is, Prahlāda is exemplifying that. He's the paragon of that. Perfect adherence to the Lord's will, complete devotion to the Lord, but no active service. Then dasyam, then now Prahlāda is saying, oh, Narada, how can you say, and Narada is his guru, right? So it's even more embarrassing for him. Oh, Narada, how can you say this, Gurudev? How can you say this about me? I don't do anything. Okay, I think about the Lord sometimes, but I'm not doing anything for him. Then he says, go to Hanuman. Hanuman, he is a supreme devotee. He's always active and actively serving his Lord. He has a much higher position than me. Then Narada goes to Hanuman. Then Hanuman is pointing to the Pandavas they are in Sakya. They have friendship relationship with the Lord. The Dasya, the servitor, keeps some distance, right? A little more formal. But the Sakya is more intimate. So Hanuman points to the Pandavas. Then the Pandavas are pointing to Uddhava. Then Uddhava is pointing to the Braja Gopis, like this. So this gradation has been discussed and presented by our Guru Varga in many places. Okay, so much more. And before I jumped over some things, but before we get to that platform of Shuddha Bhakti, then Lord Brahma he exemplifies the highest. He's presented as the highest example of karma-mishra bhakti, devotion mixed with some worldly ideals. He's the creator. He has something of the mode of passion, the desire to create, to be involved in this worldly plane. Then Lord Shiva is a mysterious person. He bats on lots of different stations. He has a position in Vrindavan also, but in the gradation of Bhagavatamrita, he's presented as exemplifying the idea of jnana-mishra bhakti, devotion mixed with the ideal of liberation, detachment, master of Maya, master of the material energy. He holds some independent position, not fully given over, wholesale surrender to the higher side. This is one aspect of Shiva, right? And then from Shiva to Prahlāda, right? And then Prahlāda moving on to higher and higher, finer, more intimate relationships with the Lord. So I'm going to stop there. Don't want this to go on too long. Then next is the final verse, 11th verse of Upadeshamrita. Thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. It's really been a joyful, exciting adventure. And please tune in for the last verse coming soon. Jai Shri Gurudev.